This week on Q&A, physician and surgeon Dr. Hassan Tetteh discusses his medical career, his service in Afghanistan, and his new book titled Gifts of the Heart.
Dr. Hassan Tetteh, you told me just before we sat down that you did a heart transplant overnight. Explain that.
Well, the transplant is a big team effort. So I was certainly not the one responsible, but I was part of the team. In this case, I was a procuring team. So myself and some of our team members flew out of state to retrieve and harvest the heart and bring it back to a patient in need. Yeah, it was a long night.
How far did you have to go?
Midwest.
You live here in town?
Yes, sir.
And what was the condition of the person that you got the heart from? Obviously dead, but...
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, it's always a tragic story. Typically, young person, because those are the most ideal candidates for organ transplants, in particular heart. Motor vehicle accident in this case, but that's typically what it is. Some common denominator among all of the donors is that they have brain death. Ultimately, that's what they, succumb to, and that's when they become candidates for organ donation. So in this case, it was a motor vehicle accident, sadly, and traumatic brain injury, and then the demise was brain death, and then becoming a candidate for donation.
I assume the secrecy, HIPAA rules mean you can't go too far with this.
Absolutely, because we have to protect the privacy of not only the donor and their family, but certainly the recipient as well. And it's something that we regard as a very precious gift that the family's offering and the individual's offering, made at the sacrifice of their passing, and so it's very revered. And on the other side, it's a joyous occasion, but at the same time, we want to respect the privacy of all of the individuals.
Without getting into the specifics, go back to how this all started for you. Where were you when you got the call?
So that's a good question, because I was at home. I was about to take my son to Scouts, actually, the Cub Scout meeting last night, and we were on our way over there. And I was telling my wife, I said, "All right, big days tomorrow, the interview, and I need to get some rest, and I'll take my son Edmund to Scouts." And one of my up, and he said, "Hassan, we have a transplant going this evening. Are you available to procure?" I'm technically on call, and I said, "I am. I have this interview tomorrow." And he said, "Well, I think the timing will be such that you can get back in time," and certainly it was. So,
excuse the specifics, but what airport do you fly out of?
Dulles, out of Dulles. Usually we fly chartered aircraft because obviously commercial, you have to coordinate all of the timing. The issue with hearts and lungs is that they have a sort of a short shelf life, if you will. We have about 4 hours, 6 hours at the max to transplant the organ once we retrieve it from the donor.
So what time did you take off out of Dulles Airport here?
Roughly about 10 p.m.
Private jet?
Yep. Yes, sir.
So what time did you get the heart?
Went to the OR around 11-ish, 11:30. Started about a little after midnight. We were wrapped up at about 3 a.m.
I'm confused. When did you leave to go get the heart?
Oh yeah, I left at about we took off at about 10 p.m.
What time did you get back here?
Just about 4 or 5 a.m. 4:30, I think.
And then when was the operation? And
then when we bring the organ back, the other team puts it into the recipient.
What hospital here?
Well, I can tell you that it's with my colleagues at Inova Fairfax.
Fairfax Hospital in the suburbs. And how many people were with you to go get the heart?
Just 2.
What do you do when you get there?
Good question. We get a lot of information from what we call our donor network. It's actually an automated system now, so it's very nice. In the past, a lot of this was done with phone calls and facsimile and to coordinate things. But once we have a match, and that's all based on sort of the criteria that UNOS establishes. UNOS is the United Network for Organ Sharing. They establish all of these criteria. and we have a recipient on a list, and they have the donor and as a match based on the blood type and, you know, severity of illness. When we get there, we verify all of the things, primarily three things. The blood type, to make sure that it's going to be compatible with the recipient that we have on the other side. We want to make sure that we also have proper consent, and every state has a different kind of you know, rule regarding that. And then we also want to make sure that we document and you know, verify that there is in fact brain death. You know.
And then when you get there, who removes the heart from the chest?
Our team does, yeah. So myself and my assistants.
Was it in a hospital?
Yes, yes, sir.
And what do you do with the heart?
We pack it on ice. We preserve it with the fluid that arrests the heart. And what that does is it slows down the metabolism and the ischemia. The ischemia is the lack of blood and oxygen and nutrients that go to the muscle. And you want to make sure you preserve the heart as best as possible. And so what we do is we infuse a perfusate that arrests the heart, makes it quiescent, slows the metabolism down, and most importantly, we cool it. And when we do that, the metabolic rate, you know, slows down. Once you remove an organ from the body, it starts to die. And so until you place it into a new recipient and revive the blood and start to circulate the nutrients and the oxygen again, the organ, you know, is dying. So the clock starts to tick, and that's why we don't have a lot of time. And as I mentioned, unlike, you know, organs like the liver and perhaps the pancreas and certainly the kidney that have a little bit of a longer tolerance for ischemia, the heart and lungs are not so resilient.
So when you get it back to Washington in the middle of the night, do you have a police escort to the hospital?
Usually an ambulance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then once you, what happened? What did you do once you got to the hospital?
We bring it into the operating room, and the team that's there, they have been working as well. It's actually a very well coordinated plan. They actually have to begin the surgery while we're working on the other side oftentimes. Depending on if it's local or if it's out in distance, we time and we plan so that ideally, and in this case that was one of the situations, you want to have the heart being removed as the new heart is in the hospital and is at the operating room, so you can just put it right in and then decrease the amount of ischemia time as much as possible.
Personal question, on the other end of this, when you picked up the heart, was the family there?
Not in the operating room, no. But
did you meet them, or?
No, typically we don't. Although in my practice and over the years, I will say that you know, one of the things that's always very touching about transplant for me is that it's one of those instances in medicine where you really see life and death, you know, firsthand. I mean, you've certainly witnessed death on one side with the donor, and then on the other side there's the recipient, and there's this joy and there's this new life. And over the years, I've actually received letters from both sides, from the donor families and from the recipient families. Letters of thanks, letters of encouragement, letters of gratitude, actually, for what, you know, our team has done. You know, I think it helps some the families that donate to have some closure and have some peace, that know that their death, often a tragic one, of their loved one wasn't in vain, and that, you know, their gift of life has now, you know, helped to serve someone else.
We're recording this at 11 o'clock in the morning. You've been up all night in late October. Do you know at this stage whether or not the heart has been transplanted?
It has.
Successfully?
Yes.
How long did that part of it take?
Typically takes about, you know, depending on the case, a few hours, a couple hours. Yeah.
How many people total are involved in?
Oh, it's a huge undertaking. You know, it's a big team effort, as I mentioned from the very beginning. No one person is the single, you know, sort of person that has done the whole job. We have nurses, we have perfusionists, we have anesthesiologists on both sides, two teams, you know, typically. And this is just for the heart team, you understand. So, you know, and on the recipient side, you know, we have the same cadre of individuals there. And then that's just the hospital teams. And then you take all of the other folks involved, the transplant coordinators, the ambulance drivers, the pilots. You know, it's a huge effort, you know, and one that is one that's taken very seriously by a number of very dedicated individuals that, you know, typically work through the night and overnight and on weekends and holidays.